They cheered for only my sister until the TV exposed who the real success was. Have you ever sat at your own family dinner table watching everyone toast your sister's latest achievement while they acted like you didn't exist? That's exactly what happened at my parents' anniversary party last month. 30 relatives raised their glasses to celebrate my sister Emma's promotion to senior manager at a regional bank while I sat at the end of the table, invisible as always. What they didn't know was that in exactly 48 hours, a live television broadcast would expose a truth that would leave them speechless. The successful daughter they'd been ignoring for 28 years was about to be revealed as someone they never saw coming. Hello everyone, I'm Sophia Chen, 34 years old, and this is the story of how my family discovered their overlooked daughter was actually worth more than everyone else at that table combined. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from. Looking back, I should have seen the pattern from childhood. Emma was 18 months older than me, louder, more demanding, better at making sure everyone knew when she succeeded. When she won a spelling bee in 3rd grade, my parents threw a party. When I won the state science fair the same year, they forgot to pick me up from school. I sat on the steps until the janitor let me use his phone. Mom said she'd been busy helping Emma with her homework. That became our family dynamic. Emma in the spotlight, me in the shadows. Our parents convinced they knew which daughter would amount to something. My father, Richard Chen, owned 3 hardware stores in suburban Portland. Nothing fancy, but he acted like he ran Home Depot. He had this way of introducing us to people that made everything clear. This is Emma, my brilliant daughter. She's going places. And this is Sophia. She's quiet but reliable. Quiet but reliable. Like I was a Honda Civic instead of a person. My mother, Janet, was worse in her own way. She'd been a beauty queen in college, married my father for his business potential, and decided early on that Emma had inherited her social intelligence while I'd gotten stuck with what she called book smarts, which in her mind meant boring. Emma leaned into their narrative perfectly. She was pretty in that obvious way that photographed well, dated the right boys from the right families, joined the right sororities, and took a job at Pacific Northwest Bank because Dad knew someone who knew someone. She climbed the ladder exactly as fast as someone with connections should climb. Nothing spectacular, nothing earned, just steady advancement based on showing up and being likable. By 35, she was senior manager of retail operations, which sounded impressive until you realized it meant she supervised tellers at 12 branch locations. But to hear my family tell it, she was basically running Wall Street. I took a different path. While Emma was learning to schmooze at college parties, I was coding until 3 a.m. In my dorm room, while she was interning at the bank through Dad's connections, I was building apps that nobody in my family understood or cared about. I tried explaining once at Thanksgiving what I was working on. Mom literally yawned mid-sentence and asked Emma about her boyfriend. That was the last time I bothered sharing anything meaningful with them. The indifference hurt more than hostility would have. They didn't dislike me, they just didn't see me. I was furniture that occasionally needed feeding, background noise in Emma's success story. The reliable one, who'd show up when needed, but never needed to be celebrated. They assigned me the role of supporting character in my own family, and for too long, I accepted it. College was where things started shifting, though my family never noticed. While Emma was getting her business degree at the local state school, I'd gotten into MIT. My parents' reaction? That's nice, honey, but Boston is so far away. Are you sure you want to be that far from family? Emma needs her sister here. They didn't even come to my graduation. Emma had a work conference that weekend, and somehow that took priority. I walked across that stage in Cambridge, collected my computer science degree, and heard strangers cheer louder for me than my family ever had. After MIT, I stayed in Boston, told my family I'd found a job at a tech company, which wasn't a lie, just an incomplete truth. They never asked for details, never Googled the company, never wondered why I could suddenly afford my own apartment in one of the most expensive cities in America. Their disinterest was so complete, it became almost fascinating. How could they care so little about what I was doing? The answer was simple. They'd already written my story. Sophia was the quiet, nerdy one who'd probably teach coding at some community college eventually. Maybe marry another programmer and have awkward children who were good at math. A respectable life, but nothing worth discussing at parties. Emma was their showpiece. I was just proof they'd successfully raised two functional adults. Every family gathering followed the same script. Emma would arrive with fresh highlights and a new designer bag, kiss everyone hello, and launch into stories about her important meetings and her influential contacts. I'd arrive on time, help mom in the kitchen, and answer the exact same three questions every relative felt obligated to ask. Still in Boston? Still doing computer stuff? Seeing anyone special? Yes, yes, and no. Then they'd turn back to Emma like they'd checked me off their list. I started treating family visits like anthropological observations. Watch how Dad's chest puffed up when Emma mentioned her title. Note how Mom touched Emma's hair while talking to her but kept her hands clasped when talking to me. Document how aunts and uncles knew every detail of Emma's professional life but couldn't even name the company I worked for. It was like being invisible at my own family reunion, and after a while, I stopped fighting it. The last Christmas before everything changed was particularly telling. Emma had just gotten engaged to Brad, a middle manager at an insurance company who talked about his golf handicap like it was a personality trait. The entire dinner became a celebration of Emma's ring, Emma's wedding plans, Emma's future with Brad in their 4-bedroom house in the suburbs. When someone finally remembered to ask what I was up to, I said I was working on something big. Mom patted my hand and said, "That's nice, dear," before immediately asking Emma if she'd chosen her wedding colors yet. That was the night I stopped trying to belong to them. If they wanted to worship Emma's mediocrity while ignoring everything I'd built, that was their choice. But I was done pretending it didn't hurt. Done making myself smaller so Emma could feel bigger. Done being reliable, quiet, Sophia who never demanded attention. They'd made their choice about which daughter mattered. They just didn't know how wrong they were yet. 5 years. That's how long I'd been building my company while my family thought I was doing computer stuff in Boston. 5 years of 18-hour days, failed prototypes, rejected pitches, and small victories that added up to something massive. But trying to explain algorithmic trading platforms to people who thought Excel was advanced technology seemed pointless, so I just stopped mentioning it. The company was called Nexus Financial Systems. Not the catchiest name, but in fintech, boring names often meant serious money. We developed an AI-powered platform that could analyze market patterns and execute trades faster than traditional systems. Nothing shady, nothing illegal, just better math applied to old problems. Our first client was a small hedge fund in Cambridge. Within 6 months, we'd increased their returns by 37%. Word spread the way it does in finance, quietly but urgently. By year 3, we had 42 institutional clients managing a combined $8.7 billion in assets. By year 5, that number was $284 billion. We weren't moving markets, but we were helping smart money get smarter. The kind of success that doesn't make headlines, but does make millionaires. I owned 62% of the company. My co-founder, Marcus, owned 25%. The rest was distributed among our 12 employees because I believed in sharing success with people who helped build it. The irony was perfect. While Emma was managing 12 bank branches with maybe $200 million in total deposits, I was helping manage more money than existed in Oregon's entire credit union system. While she was getting promoted to senior manager with a $90,000 salary, I was turning down acquisition offers worth more than my father's hardware stores would generate in a lifetime. But none of that mattered if my family didn't know about it, and I'd stopped expecting them to care enough to ask. The invitation to Bloomberg Tech Summit came through my assistant on a Tuesday. They wanted me to join a panel discussing the future of financial technology. The other panelists included the CFO of Goldman Sachs, the founder of a major cryptocurrency exchange, and a Federal Reserve Board member. They were putting me on stage with people who moved billions with their decisions. My first instinct was to decline. I hated public speaking, hated attention, hated anything that might pierce the comfortable anonymity I'd built around my success. But Marcus convinced me otherwise. "Sophie," he said, using the nickname only he was allowed to use, "you've hidden long enough. The industry needs to see that innovation doesn't always come from Stanford bros with venture capital connections. Sometimes it comes from MIT girls who nobody expected anything from. Besides, Bloomberg meant legitimacy. It meant recognition from the establishment I'd been quietly disrupting. It meant proving that you could change the world without announcing it on social media every 5 minutes. I accepted the invitation, then immediately regretted it, then accepted it again in my mind, then panicked. then bought a new suit, then returned the suit, then bought a better one. The event was scheduled for a Thursday morning, which meant I'd need to miss my cousin's baby shower that weekend. When I told Mom I couldn't make it due to a work commitment, she sighed like I'd personally offended her. Emma would never miss family for work, she said. Priorities, Sophia, priorities. The panel was scheduled for 11 a.m. Eastern, which meant 8 a.m. Pacific. I knew my family would never watch it. They didn't even have Bloomberg. But something made me text the information to our family group chat anyway. Speaking at a conference Thursday, if anyone's interested. The responses were predictable. Mom sent a thumbs-up emoji. Dad didn't respond. Emma wrote, "Can't wait," but with that kind of fake enthusiasm that meant she'd definitely forget. My aunt asked if it was being recorded so she could watch later, which we both knew meant never. Thursday arrived gray and humid in New York. I sat in the green room at Bloomberg's headquarters, trying not to sweat through my new suit while making small talk with people who controlled more wealth than some countries. The Goldman CFO was nice enough, asking genuine questions about our platform. The crypto founder was exactly what you'd expect. 31 years old, hoodie under blazer, wouldn't stop talking about disruption. The Fed board member looked like she'd rather be anywhere else, which made two of us. When they called us to stage, my legs felt disconnected from my body. The studio was smaller than it looked on TV, but somehow more intimidating. Cameras everywhere, lights that could probably be seen from space, and a live audience of about 50 finance professionals who looked like they ate anxiety for breakfast. The host, David Weston, shook our hands and made jokes to lighten the mood. I laughed at the appropriate moments while privately planning my escape route. Then we were live. The red light on camera 1 turned on, and suddenly 3 million people were watching. David introduced each panelist with the kind of gravitas that made everyone sound important. The Goldman CFO had restructured debt for developing nations. The crypto founder had made the Forbes 30 Under 30 list 3 times. The Fed board member had advised 2 presidents. Then he got to me. Sophia Chen might be the most successful entrepreneur you've never heard of. Her company, Nexus Financial Systems, quietly manages algorithmic trading for institutions, controlling nearly $300 billion in assets. At 34, she's built one of the most sophisticated financial AI platforms in existence, and she's done it without a single press release or publicity campaign. Sophia, why the secrecy? I leaned toward my microphone, acutely aware that my voice was about to be broadcast to millions. I've never believed that success needs an audience. The best companies solve problems quietly and efficiently. We don't disrupt markets. We make them work better. Our clients don't care about our story. They care about their returns. And we've delivered an average of 41% improvement over traditional trading methods. The crypto founder jumped in immediately, talking about how the old guard of finance was dying, how blockchain would revolutionize everything, how companies like mine were just band-aids on a broken system. I let him talk, then responded with numbers. Blockchain is fascinating technology, I said, but our AI executed $17 billion in trades yesterday with 0 failures and transaction costs of less than 0.01%. When crypto can match that reliability at that scale, we'll be the first to adopt it. The audience actually laughed. David Weston smiled. The Goldman CFO nodded appreciatively. The crypto founder looked like he wanted to argue, but couldn't find the numbers to back it up. Because that was the thing about real success. It didn't need rhetoric. It just needed results. The conversation evolved from there. We discussed market volatility, the role of AI in finance, the ethical implications of algorithmic trading. I found myself forgetting the cameras, forgetting the audience, just talking about what I loved with people who understood it. When David asked about the future of Nexus, I mentioned we were considering an IPO within the next 18 months. The Goldman CFO's eyebrows raised. Preliminary valuations suggested we could debut at around $4.8 billion. That's when David pulled up a graphic. Can we talk about your background for a moment? You're entirely self-funded, correct? No venture capital, no private equity, no family money. That's remarkable in this space. Tell us about that journey. I thought about my family, probably not watching, definitely not caring. Started with $60,000 in savings from my first job out of MIT, reinvested everything for the first 3 years. Lived on ramen and determination. My family thought I was wasting my potential, not taking a corporate job, but I knew what I was building would matter more than a steady paycheck. Sometimes the best motivation is people believing you won't amount to much. The panel wrapped up after an hour. David thanked us, the audience applauded, and I thought that was it. Just another Thursday morning in New York talking about billions of dollars like it was normal. I had no idea that back in Portland, my phone was exploding with messages I wouldn't see for another 2 hours. No idea that my cousin had been channel surfing and stopped on Bloomberg because she recognized my face. No idea that she'd immediately called everyone in our family screaming about what she'd just heard. By the time I landed back in Boston that afternoon, I had 73 missed calls. My father, who normally communicated through Mom, had called 12 times. Emma had left 6 voicemails, each one increasingly frantic. The family group chat had exploded with screenshots from the Bloomberg website, where someone had posted a clip titled "Young CEO Stuns Panel with $4.8 billion IPO Announcement." The quiet daughter they'd ignored for 3 decades had just been revealed as wealthier than all of them combined, and they had no idea how to process it. The first voicemail from Emma was almost funny in its confusion. "Sophia, I just saw something online. Call me back. This is urgent." The second one had a different tone. "Why didn't you tell us you were going on TV?" The third dropped all pretense. "Is it true? 4.8 billion? That can't be right." By the 6th message, she was angry. "How could you not tell your own family about this?" Dad's messages were shorter but more telling. "Call home immediately." Then, "Your mother is upset." Then, "We need to talk about this situation." The situation. Like my success was a problem to be solved rather than celebrated. Mom hadn't called at all, which meant she was either in shock or strategizing. With her, it was always hard to tell the difference. The text messages were even more revealing. Aunts and uncles who hadn't contacted me in years suddenly remembered I existed. Cousins who'd never acknowledged my birthday were asking for career advice. High school classmates I hadn't spoken to since graduation were reaching out to reconnect. Everyone wanted to know how I'd hidden such massive success, but what they really wanted to know was what it meant for them. I didn't respond to any of it. Instead, I went home to my apartment, ordered Thai food, and watched the Bloomberg segment online. It was surreal seeing myself on screen, calmly discussing billions while sitting next to financial titans. I looked confident, composed, even powerful. Nothing like the quiet, reliable Sophia my family thought they knew. The comments section was brutal and beautiful. Some people accused me of being a diversity hire for the panel. Others called me the most impressive entrepreneur they'd never heard of. But the comment that made me laugh was from username PDXTrader. Wait, is this the same Sophia Chen whose sister works at Pacific Northwest Bank? The dynamics of that family dinner must be insane. That night, I finally responded to the family group chat with just one message. "Yes, it's true. No, I didn't hide it. You just never asked what I actually did for work. See you at the anniversary party next week." Then I muted the conversation and went to bed. For the first time in my life, I wasn't worried about what my family thought. They'd had 34 years to see me. If it took Bloomberg to open their eyes, that was their loss, not mine. The anniversary party was at the Riverside Country Club, the kind of place my parents loved because it made them feel successful. 35 years of marriage deserved a proper celebration, Mom had insisted, which meant she'd invited everyone who might be impressed by the venue. 150 guests, most of whom I recognized but had never really known. The same relatives who asked the same 3 questions. The same family friends who confused me with Emma half the time. The same audience for the same performance, except this time, the script had changed. I arrived exactly on time, wearing the same style simple black dress I always wore to family events. No designer labels, no statement jewelry, nothing that would suggest I was worth more than the building we were standing in. I wanted to see if anything had really changed beyond their sudden awareness of my bank account. The reaction was immediate and almost comedic. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Heads turned like synchronized swimmers. My Uncle Robert, who'd never remembered my name correctly, practically sprinted across the room. "Sophia, there you are. We saved you a seat at the main table." The main table. In 34 years, I'd never sat at the main table. That was for Emma, my parents, and whoever they were trying to impress. I'd always been at table 3 with the distant relatives and plus ones. "Thank you," I said, "but I'm comfortable where I usually sit." His face went through several expressions before landing on confused desperation. "But he stopped, probably realizing that saying "you're rich now" out loud would be too obvious. Emma appeared at my elbow, wearing a dress that probably cost more than most people's rent. She air-kissed me, something she'd never done before, and grabbed my arm like we were best friends. "There's my amazing sister. Can you believe we're related to a future billionaire?" She laughed too loud, and several people turned to stare. "Tell everyone about your company. When's the IPO again?" I gently extracted my arm. "Let's focus on Mom and Dad tonight. It's their anniversary." She blinked rapidly, the way she did when things weren't going according to plan. "Of course, but people want to hear about your success. You've been so secretive about it." "Not secretive," I said, loud enough for the growing cluster of relatives to hear. "Just quiet. There's a difference. I talked about my work at every family gathering for years. Nobody seemed interested in computer stuff, remember? Aunt Patricia, who'd once told me I should be more like Emma if I wanted to find a husband, pushed forward. "I always knew you were special, Sophia. I told everyone you'd do great things." That was a lie so bold I actually laughed. "You told me to consider becoming Emma's assistant because at least then I'd be around successful people." The group shifted uncomfortably. Emma's smile became fixed, brittle. "Let's not dredge up the past," she said. "We're all family here." Mom and Dad made their entrance then, and I was saved from responding. Mom looked like she'd spent the entire week at the salon. Dad wore a new suit that still had the tags tucked inside the collar. I could see it when he hugged me, which was another first. He hadn't hugged me since high school graduation. "Sophia, sweetheart," Mom said, taking my hands in hers. "You look wonderful. We have so much to catch up on. Why don't you sit with us during dinner?" "I'm actually giving the toast," I said. "Remember? You asked me months ago?" Her face went blank. "The toast? For your anniversary? You asked me to prepare something." "Oh," she recovered quickly. "Of course. How wonderful. Though maybe Emma should also say something, since she's so good with public speaking." "Emma is welcome to speak after me," I said. "If she'd like." Dinner was a study in social dynamics. Everyone wanted to sit near me, talk to me, be seen with me. The same cousins who'd forgotten my birthday suddenly remembered inside jokes from childhood. The same aunts who'd called me antisocial were now praising my independence. The same family friends who'd pitied my parents for having one successful daughter were now congratulating them on raising 2 remarkable women. Brad, Emma's fiancé, cornered me at the bar. "So, AI trading platforms. That's like what, robots buying stocks?" "Something like that," I said, ordering a water. "Must be nice," he continued, "not having to actually work. Just let the computers do everything." I looked at him steadily. I wrote the code that powers those computers. From scratch. Took me 3 years of working 20-hour days. But you're right, Brad. The computers do everything. That's why Goldman Sachs tried to buy my algorithm for $800 million last year. His mouth opened and closed like a fish. Emma appeared and dragged him away, but not before I heard her whisper, "Stop talking. You're embarrassing yourself." The toast moment arrived between dinner and dessert. Mom clinked her glass and announced that her daughter would like to say something, conveniently not specifying which daughter. Emma started to stand, but I was already at the microphone. "Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we're celebrating 35 years of marriage between Richard and Janet Chen. 35 years of building a life, a family, a legacy." I paused, looking at my parents. Growing up in this family taught me valuable lessons. I learned that success isn't always recognized by those closest to you. I learned that quiet achievement often goes unnoticed, while loud mediocrity gets celebrated. And I learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's just succeeding despite being overlooked. The room had gone completely silent. But I also learned about persistence from watching my father build his business, about presentation from watching my mother navigate social situations, about resilience from being the invisible daughter at family gatherings. Every lesson, even the painful ones, shaped who I became. So tonight, I want to thank my parents for teaching me that if you want recognition, you can't wait for others to give it to you. You have to earn it so undeniably that even Bloomberg has to pay attention." Nervous laughter rippled through the room. Emma looked like she'd swallowed a lemon. "To Richard and Janet Chen," I concluded, raising my water glass. "May the next 35 years bring you the joy of truly seeing both your daughters." The applause was awkward, uncertain. Mom was dabbing at her eyes, though I couldn't tell if she was touched or mortified. Dad looked confused, like he was trying to solve an equation that didn't balance. Emma grabbed the microphone as soon as I stepped away. "What Sophia means," she said, her voice artificially bright, "is that our parents raised two successful daughters in very different ways. I've always been the people person, the one who builds relationships and maintains traditions. Sophia's the behind-the-scenes genius who none of us really understood, but that's what makes our family special. We each have our role. Our roles." Even now, even after everything, she was still trying to assign me a part in her story, the quiet genius who worked in the shadows while Emma shone in the light, the successful sister who didn't quite fit the family image, the billionaire who somehow still ranked below the bank manager in the family hierarchy. Cousin Michelle approached me after Emma's speech. "You know," she said quietly, "we all knew you were smart. We just didn't know you were that kind of smart." "What kind is that?" I asked. "The kind that matters," she admitted, "the kind that changes things. We thought Emma was the success story because she fit what we understood. You were doing something none of us could even comprehend." She paused. "We should have tried harder to understand. It was the closest thing to an apology I'd get from any of them." I accepted it with a nod, then excused myself to get some air. On the country club's terrace, I could see the city lights stretching toward the mountains. Portland looked small from here, manageable, like a problem I'd already solved. Emma found me there. She stood beside me, both of us looking at the view instead of each other. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked finally. "I did," I said. "Every Thanksgiving, I talked about my company. Every Christmas, I mentioned our growth. Every family gathering, I tried to share what I was building. You all just heard computer stuff and tuned out." She was quiet for a long moment. 4.8 billion. "It's just a number." "It's not just a number, Sophia. She struggled for words. It's everything I thought I was working toward, except you already have it, and you got it without any of us noticing." "Maybe that's the point," I said. "I didn't need you to notice. I needed you to notice, but I didn't need it. There's a difference." She turned to look at me then, really look at me, perhaps for the first time in our adult lives. "I don't know how to be your sister," she admitted. "I only know how to be the successful one." "Then learn," I said simply. "Because I'm not going anywhere, and neither is my success." We stood there in silence until Dad came to find us. His two daughters, he announced to no one in particular, both successful in their own ways. The phrase fell flat, and he knew it. He tried again. "Sophia, I want to understand what you do, really understand. Not just the money part, the actual work. Will you teach me?" It was the first genuine question he'd asked about my life in years. I nodded. "We can start tomorrow if you'd like." The party wound down differently than family gatherings usually did. Instead of Emma holding court with stories about the bank, relatives crowded around me with questions about AI, about trading, about building something from nothing. I answered what I could, deflected what I couldn't, and noticed Emma watching from across the room. She wasn't angry anymore, just lost, like someone had rearranged all the furniture in her house. As I was leaving, Mom stopped me at the door. She held my hands again, but this time it felt less performative. "We failed you," she said quietly. We had this idea of what success looked like, and it looked like Emma. Traditional, understandable, safe. You were doing something we couldn't see, so we didn't see you. She squeezed my hands. "I don't know how to fix 34 years of blindness, but I want to try." "Start by asking questions," I said. "Real ones, and actually listen to the answers." She nodded, then did something unexpected. She asked, "What does your company actually do? Not the money part, the actual work that you're proud of." So I told her. Right there in the country club doorway, I explained how we democratized institutional-level trading tools, how small pension funds could now compete with major banks, how teachers' retirement savings were growing faster because of code I'd written. Her eyes glazed over a bit at the technical parts, but she kept listening, kept nodding, kept trying. It was a start. The IPO happened 14 months later. We opened at $82 per share and closed the first day at $97. My 62% stake was worth just over $3 billion. The financial press called it the quietest success story in tech history. A company nobody had heard of, founded by a woman nobody knew, suddenly worth more than most banks. The Bloomberg panel appearance became required viewing at business schools, a masterclass in understated competence. My family attended the IPO ceremony at the New York Stock Exchange. All of them. Parents, Emma, Brad, aunts, uncles, cousins. They stood in the viewing gallery while I rang the opening bell. Emma cried, and I don't think it was for show. Dad took more pictures than a tourist. Mom told everyone within earshot that I was her daughter, the CEO, the one who built this from nothing. But the moment that mattered most came later, at the private dinner afterward. Emma pulled me aside and handed me an envelope. Inside was a printed email she'd sent to all her contacts at Pacific Northwest Bank. It recommended me as a keynote speaker for their annual conference, not because I was her sister, not because I was rich, but because, as she wrote, Sophia Chen represents the kind of innovation traditional finance needs to understand if we want to remain relevant. It wasn't an apology, but it was an acknowledgement. She was finally seeing me as myself, not as her quiet shadow or her unexpected competition. Just Sophia, who happened to be exceptional at something Emma was learning to respect. The conference happened 3 months later. Emma introduced me to the audience of 500 banking professionals. She talked about growing up with someone whose intelligence operated on a different frequency. She admitted she'd mistaken quiet for absence, focus for antisocial behavior, brilliance for something that didn't need attention. She said she was proud to be my sister, and for the first time, it sounded true. My presentation was about the future of financial technology, but it was really about being underestimated. I talked about how the best innovations come from people who aren't invited to the table, so they build their own. How silence isn't absence, but observation. How the most powerful position is the one nobody sees coming. The banking executives took notes, asked questions, and several approached me afterward about partnerships. Emma watched from the front row. No longer the successful sister with the quiet sibling, but a regional bank manager learning from her CEO sister. The dynamics had shifted, but not in the way she'd feared. I wasn't replacing her or competing with her. I was just existing at my actual size instead of the small space they'd assigned me. After the conference, we had lunch together. First time in years, just the two of us. She asked real questions about my work, my life, my plans. I asked about hers, not out of obligation, but genuine interest. We weren't best friends, might never be, but we were finally sisters who saw each other clearly. You know what the strangest part is? She said over dessert. I spent so much energy being the successful one that I never noticed you weren't even competing. You were playing an entirely different game. Not playing, I corrected. Building. Games have winners and losers. I was just building something that mattered to me. She nodded slowly. I want to learn more about what you do. Not to compete or compare. Just to understand my sister better. It had taken 34 years, a Bloomberg panel, and a $3 billion IPO for my family to see me. But sitting there with Emma, watching her genuinely try to understand who I'd always been, I realized something important. Their recognition hadn't changed me. I was the same person who'd coded through college, who'd built a company from nothing, who'd solved problems they didn't know existed. The only thing that changed was their ability to perceive what had always been there. That night, I got a text from Emma in the family group chat. Watched an old video from Sophia's MIT graduation today. We should have been there. I'm sorry we weren't. Can we have a do-over celebration? Better late than never. The responses came quickly. Mom suggested a dinner. Dad offered to host. Aunts and uncles promised to attend. For the first time in the chat's history, an event was being planned around me. Not because I was worth billions, but because they finally understood they'd missed something worth celebrating the first time around. I typed my response. Only if we also celebrate Emma's latest promotion properly, and cousin Michelle's new baby, and Uncle Robert's retirement, and everyone else we forgot to fully see while we were busy assigning roles. Emma hearted the message immediately. Deal, she wrote. No more invisible achievements in this family. Looking back now, 3 years after that anniversary party, 5 years after the Bloomberg panel, I can see the journey clearly. Success was never about proving my family wrong or showing them up. It wasn't about the money or the recognition or the validation I'd craved as a child. It was about building something meaningful despite their blindness, not to spite it. My relationship with my family has evolved into something healthier, though not perfect. Emma and I have monthly video calls where we discuss our work without comparison. She's actually good at her job when she's not trying to be the only successful daughter. She's helped several small businesses get loans they needed to grow, and she tells me about each one with genuine pride. I celebrate her victories now because they're real, not inflated for family consumption. Dad has become my most unexpected student. He reads every article about fintech, sends me questions at random hours, and has started investing in technology he actually understands. He still doesn't fully grasp what I do, but he tries, and that effort means everything. He introduces me now as my daughter Sophia, who built something I'm still learning to understand, and that honesty is worth more than any boasting. Mom has perhaps changed the most. She started a monthly dinner series where each family member presents something they're working on or interested in. No judgments, no comparisons, just sharing. We've discovered Uncle Robert writes poetry, cousin Michelle is learning Japanese, and Emma's husband Brad actually has a fascinating hobby restoring vintage motorcycles. All these hidden depths we'd never seen because we were too busy performing our assigned roles. The money changed things, of course. I'd be lying if I said it didn't, but not in the ways you'd expect. I set up education trusts for all my younger cousins, but with a requirement. They have to study something they're passionate about, not what the family expects. I bought my parents a house with a workshop for Dad and an art studio for Mom, spaces for the interests they'd abandoned to appear successful. I offered to invest in Emma's dream of starting a community development fund, not as charity, but as a genuine business partnership. She's actually brilliant at understanding local market needs, skills that were wasted in retail banking. We're launching it next year, two sisters combining different expertise to create something neither could build alone. But the biggest change has been in how I see myself. For so long, I defined myself in opposition to their blindness. The overlooked daughter, the invisible achiever, the quiet success story. But that was just another role, another box, another limitation. Now I'm just Sophia, sometimes quiet, sometimes bold, sometimes collaborative, sometimes independent. Successful not because Bloomberg noticed, but because I built something that helps others succeed. The family group chat still exists, though it's different now. People share real achievements and real struggles. Emma posted about a difficult day at work, and everyone offered genuine support instead of empty platitudes. I shared a coding problem I was stuck on, and Dad spent 3 hours researching to try to help. Mom posts her paintings, amateur but heartfelt. We're learning to see each other as complete people, not just the roles we assigned decades ago. Last month was my parents' 38th anniversary. This time, the dinner was small, just family, no performance. Emma gave a toast about how our parents taught us resilience in different ways. I talked about how their blindness had inadvertently given me the freedom to build without expectation. Mom cried, but it was the good kind of tears. Dad said he was proud of both his daughters, and for the first time, it felt equally true. After dinner, Emma and I stood on that same country club terrace where we'd had our first real conversation 3 years earlier. The city lights still stretched toward the mountains, but now they looked different. Not like a problem to solve, but like possibilities to explore. You know what I realized? Emma said. You didn't become successful to prove us wrong. You were always successful. We just finally learned how to see it. She was right. The Bloomberg panel hadn't revealed my success. It had revealed my family's limited definition of it. The IPO hadn't made me valuable. It had just given them a number they could understand. The money hadn't changed who I was. It had changed their ability to perceive who I'd always been. That's the thing about being invisible in your own family. You think you need their recognition to be real. You spend years trying to earn a seat at a table that was never built with you in mind. You make yourself smaller or louder or different, hoping they'll finally see you. But the truth is, you were always complete, always worthy, always enough. They just needed better glasses. Now, when people ask how I built a billion-dollar company without my family noticing, I tell them the truth. I didn't build it without them noticing. I built it without needing them to notice. There's a profound difference. One is about spite. The other is about freedom. One requires their participation in your success. The other only requires your own. My name is Sophia Chen. I'm 37 years old now, CEO of a public company worth $4.8 billion. But more importantly, I'm someone who learned that the most powerful success is the kind you build for yourself, not for an audience. Even if that audience is your own family. Especially if that audience is your own family. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever been the overlooked sibling, the quiet one, the one whose achievements didn't fit the expected mold, I want you to know something. Your success doesn't need their validation to be real. Your worth doesn't require their recognition. Build something that matters to you. Let them catch up when they're ready. Or don't. Either way, you'll have built something real, something yours, something that no amount of family blindness can erase. The most satisfying moment isn't when they finally see you. It's when you realize you no longer need them to. That's when you're truly free. That's when you truly succeed. And that's when, if they're lucky, they'll finally learn to see who you really are. Not the quiet one, not the reliable one, not the overlooked one. Just you, exactly as valuable as you've always been. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever been underestimated by the people who should have seen you first, please subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Remember, sometimes the best revenge isn't proving them wrong. It's proving yourself right, whether they notice or not.